Okay, so we are back. My apologies to everyone. My camera ran out of space, and so I had to download or make some room for additional interview space. So we're back with the Standages, and before we broke, I had just asked the Standages, what was it like going from basically living most of their lives in Mesa, a community which at the time was had a very high concentration of members of the church, to a community like the Globe Miami area, where although there were members of the church, certainly most of the people were not members of the church. So what was that like?
It was interesting. We left a place where there wasn't a lot of demand for our services. In fact, they had to make up jobs in the ward that we were in to give us something to do. So our first calling was to be team primary teachers, I think it was.
Sunday school teachers.
Sunday school teachers. And I got to be a home teacher. So that was it for 2 years. But I was real impressed by some of the talent they have down there. I modeled myself after one guy who was working on his PhD at ASU, I think, and he was our elders quorum teacher. I think that was his only calling, and he was really quite a wonderful teacher, able to make the lessons come alive, and he always had activities to go with his lesson that engaged everybody. So everyone looked forward to his priesthood lessons, which were every Sunday. And I hope that one day I could have been able to model some of that in my own teaching technique.
Sister Standage, what do you think? What was it like switching?
Well, it was kind of hard, just because coming up here, the numbers were smaller. I was immediately called to be a teacher in the young women, and we didn't have that many, and there was no rest. I mean, we immediately got called to jobs, and anyway, but we got used to the difference, and we're always kept busy, and our sons, maybe had more opportunities to do things here, and of course they needed to be great examples, with so many not being members of the church. So it was definitely different, smaller than we were used to, but we got used to it and enjoyed it.
Now, the two of you moved here before the stake was actually created.
Yes.
So when you moved here, you were part of, I think it was called the St. Joseph stake.
Yes, it was.
What thoughts did you have when the stake was created?
Well, I thought it was wonderful, and I thought it was probably part of the reason things went the way they did with me, to want to come up here and to take a job. I felt like we were needed up here more than we were needed down the valley. And we were real excited about being part of the creation of a new stake, although it required living a lot of the law of sacrifice. And there was a lot of people who did a lot of sacrificing to get the stake.
And traveling to Thatcher, and we had two small boys, and so that wasn't always the easiest. So we may not have been able to go to as many of the meetings as we wanted to, at least me with the boys. Richard, if he had any callings in the stake or ward that he needed to chant, he always did.
And when you talk about sacrifice, what other, is there more to that you want to?
Well, we sacrificed our time and our money. I was only making, my first contract for the teaching was $6,200 for a year. And so if they ask you for $500 of that after tithing, that's a sacrifice when you're just a young person starting out. But we did it.
And was that like for building fund?
Yes. And whatever else came along, we had a lot of fundraising in the old building, and we didn't use paper plates. So it was all melamine dishware that they had and crockware, and that was always a lot of work every month or so. I don't know how often we did that. Was it every week or every month? There was always fundraising dinners of one kind or another, and auctions and so forth. But every time we would get close to making our gold, which is, I think, 1/3, and then the church would produce the other 2/3, which was generous of them, we would find that inflation had caused our 1/3 to be too short because it's gone up. B.J. Cecil was our president, and he had in his mind the Lower Field Activity Center and also the building. And in the building, we designed it so, I say we, the architects, with our input, to have a pipe organ in there. And that's the way this vaulted ceiling is, and a hard background so it would cast the music forward to the listener. But we just kept running out of money. So he said, it's either we start building now or we wait and raise another $150,000 for a pipe organ, something of that nature. You know, I'm not exact on my figures, but we decided it was time to build before it went up again. So that's what we did. And we then volunteered our labor on the building where we could. Paul Franklin was the surveyor for the land, and I volunteered to help him by being his rod guy. Man, so he would look through his transit and see where the mark was and the elevation, and he'd run me over to another place. And so it was interesting to work with him.
Did you, any other particular projects that you worked on in constructing the stake center that you recall or that you find noteworthy?
Oh, well, I can't think of anything directly. We had the lower building. We envisioned that to be a great family gathering place, a place for stake events. And we were going to have a stage building and a place for scout storage. That would be in that lower field area where they could have Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and Explorer Scouts have activities down there, young men, young women organization. But everything changes over time and your priorities change. Also have 2 ball diamonds with lights. You know, we did have the lights, and then the neighbors complained about the lights. So we were against some kind of city code running those lights other than a designated ballpark. So they went away. BJ was essentially the guy who could find all these things almost for free, you know, for trading labor with his trucking company. And so we got a lot of those things. The first steps that ran down to the building were salvaged from some of the work that he did at other mine sites. They already had a staircase, and we just dropped it in place. So those kind of things happened out all the time.
Sister Standage, what sort of memories do you have about the construction of the stake center and fundraising and that type of thing?
Well, I wasn't involved with the construction, but if there was any of the cleaning, you know, maybe we had to do that some, and involved in fundraisers. I remember they had a fundraiser one time. I don't remember all the details, that you had different groups that were going to make, they made a nice dinner, and a group of people paid so much for the dinner, and they came to your house and ate it, you know, so I had to fix the dinner and stuff, and I can't remember how much they charged for that, but I remember doing stuff like that, cooking, and just cleaning, but not too involved in a lot of the other projects.
Do you remember the dedication at all?
I do remember it, but not in detail. Sister Vanetta Dallas.
Well, that was the groundbreaking, wasn't it?
That was the groundbreaking, that's right.
Yeah, so. I know Vanetta Dallas was involved with the groundbreaking. I remember seeing her and these others out there doing the shoveling and stuff. I remember that. The actual dedication,
I don't remember too much about that, except that I believe they brought in a flatbed trailer with a semi and kind of cleaned it up and covered the borders of it with skirting, and that became the platform stage for the dedication, if I remember right. Which
So
is not likely.
now, any particular, so you raised your family here in Globe. What was it like raising a family, you know, here in Globe? Again, you had the opportunity to be brought up in Mesa with a lot of members of the church. How did you feel raising your family here in Globe?
They were able to be involved in a lot of sports, and of course then they were involved in Cub Scouts and scouting, and so that kept them very busy. They always had jobs. It seems like each of our boys worked at Dairy Queen.
Each of them had a paper route.
Yeah, they started out with the silver belt, every delivering once a week, and
Cost us more money to have them have the paper route than it made them
but
money.
they did it, and when one got too old, thinking they got too old, then the next one would step up and do it. So they did that for years. And I say Dairy Queen, some of them had other jobs. I know Aaron was a lifeguard out at the community center. Rob worked at the bank when he got older with, and one of them was at Subway, one at Fry's, but they all worked at Dairy Queen.
But I think spiritually speaking, the area lent itself to standing up for your beliefs. You either were in it because you believed it, or you were just not respected, you know. And if you, at that time, the LDS people were kind of looked down on, I found, which was something I was not accustomed to, having grown up in Mesa. But up here, they did not have a very good rapport with the public, and there was a lot of prejudice in town. But that began to change when we became a stake, and people began to recognize that the Savior was at work here, I think, in his church.
Yeah, to be good examples. And I remember our son Rick played football, and some of the other team members would call him Stormin' Mormon. So that was kind of fun. But
football season,
they had a lot of opportunities.
Now, both of you, well, you've already mentioned that coming from Mesa to here, you felt like you were needed and you had lots of opportunities to serve in the church. Brother Standage, you have been a bishop, you've been a counselor in the stake presidency. Currently, you're the stake patriarch, and you've served many, many other callings. Sister Standage, you have been, I think, Stake Young Women's president. You've been World Relief Society president. Maybe, I think, you're going to Stake Young Women's or Stake Relief Society?
Stake Relief Society president. I haven't been in the stake primary, but I was in the ward primary as a counselor and a teacher and a pianist. But first came up here about 12 or so years. I was in Stake Young Women, and so I've had a lot of neat opportunities to serve with wonderful people.
Would you like to expand on some of those opportunities, some of the experiences that you've had in your callings?
Well, many years of going to girls' camp up at Workman Creek and Horizons 84 in Flagstaff. I was the Stake Young Women president then, and we were able to go up there in August for like 5 or 6 days, have wonderful experiences for the girls and the leaders. Had Ardith Cap there and Elder Harmon Rector Jr. Elaine Cannon came and was a speaker. They just had all kinds of workshops and lots of wonderful spiritual activities for the young women and the leaders. It was just neat.
Any particular things happen there that you can recall that kind of stand out? Any?
Well, we had like the stake young women presidency, and of all the different stakes, we were able to meet at a leadership meeting with Sister Cap and Elder Rector, and some, just being close to them, and just all the young women. It was just so neat to see them do their different activities and walk to the Sky Dome. And
the Sky Dome is the dome stadium at the Northern Arizona University,
yes,
right?
Yes. It was just a wonderful experience. We were worn out. We were tired. And I remember we would go to bed very late at night because of the activities they had planned. And then we as stake leaders had other things that we had to do after that. But it was just a neat experience for any of those who attended.
Brother Standage, any particular experiences through your various callings that you'd like to expand on?
Well, I was never comfortable in any of the callings that they gave me, except maybe Elders Quorum instructor. That was the first calling. And then everything after that seemed to be, why are they calling me to this?
Drama director.
Yeah, that was...
in the ward, that was
I've never done anything like that, but I fortunately had some opportunity as a youth to be in a couple of road shows in my own ward and stakes, but which were a lot of fun. So Shirley Dawson was in it, and I was the drama director. They called me as a specialist. And we worked together and put on quite a number of productions. And I was pleased that they turned out as well, and the youth responded well. And, we put them on, and although it was mostly parents of the youth who came to see it, they were open to anybody who wanted to come. So they were good programs.
Steve Burke was one of the youth.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Really
someone who's still around.
Well, there are a lot of the Domlin girls and others, but my goodness, working with the youth was a kind of a pet project of mine through the years, to work with the Scouts and try to improve what they had, including the seminary program, which was meeting in an old, kind of a rundown shanty down near East Street or below even. And the kids from high school would go there and have their seminary, and then they'd go back to school. But we eventually were able to convince the church we would build the building, and that would become this new seminary building right next door to the high school. And that was all volunteer labor. It was a weaver. Ted Weaver's the one I'm most familiar with, but his dad was a key contractor for that, although he did it without pay. And we were just his laborers, and he'd tell us to do this and do that, and we would be quick to do it. And then we landscaped it. So the youth had a place that they could be proud of, to say that they go over here for seminary on release time.
And it was release time then.
Yeah.
We had Brother Woodhouse, who was one of the seminary teachers, Brother Cope, Brother Mormon. Those are just some of them that I'm remembering.
Well, it turned out a lot of the other youth at the high school would go over there and eat their lunch on the picnic benches that were on the lawn and tree with the LDS youth. So it kind of became a magnet and a way to let the youth let their light so shine, and they attracted others to the activities. But I wanted to get our youth to go on missions, and the best way you could do that is start young and stay close to the youth and watch them develop and grow and encourage them to go on a mission. Our biggest problem was, as soon as they graduated from high school, they went to college, and that's where you would lose them, unless almost a miracle would happen. But quite a bit of the youth did respond to our encouragement and field missions. And we kept their plaques on the walls of the church for everybody to see that they are called to such and such a place. And I think that was a real incentive for the younger youth coming up to see the older youth set the example for them.
Any other particular memories from different callings you'd like to share?
Well, of course, we had stake young women recognition nights, and we would recognize all of the young women who earned their medallions, and we would have a dinner and a special program. And so that was something to look forward to. They had stake youth activities, dances. They had some good activities.
We began to have Pioneer Day celebrations at the Stake Center when we started that out, and it became a tradition that was really good, that brought the whole stake together for people to meet each other, and every ward and branch had some assignment to do. And then it kind of grew. They had more programming, more activities, and so forth. We were once contemplating having a zip line to come down, and but President Dalton said, that's not a good idea. We might wind up getting into a lawsuit with that, so that never happened. But there are a lot of good memories of those times. You know, it's funny, all of the callings I had were difficult to master, and strangely as it sounds, I found being called as the stake athletic director, if you can believe me as an athletic director, was one of the more difficult ones, because I didn't ever really get into sports too deeply. I enjoyed them, but I said, well, okay, what do I do? So I got Brother Blake, or former Bishop Blake, to help me out, and together we were able to get a new scoreboard that was actually on the wall, and nets and equipment, and we even got paid referees to referee the basketball games, which got kind of heated once in a while. And I was trying to work the scoreboard, and boy, were they sensitive about if you got the score wrong. They were right up there in your face. But sportsmanship was the objective, I think, of the whole thing, and camaraderie. So it kind of went up and down in cycles. Being a high counselor was great. Being a counselor to the bishop was great. Being a bishop was wonderful, although it was a lot of work, and I had good help with a lot of different people. Larry McClendon was probably my longest running and most faithful counselor, and also Bill Fogarty was a convert to the church, and he was our ward clerk for a long time. And when I was replaced, Bishop Crockett was one of the bishops that followed in. I told him, just, you know, if we can get Joe Mounts, who's been kind of warming up a little bit, he would do well as a ward clerk, and he did. He was a financial clerk for a long time.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to ask a final question and then give you an invitation. The question is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? Any other story, faith, or otherwise that might be helpful? And then I'll invite both of you to leave a brief testimony.
Well, you mentioned once to me about the dream I had when I was living in Mesa, that I saw in a dream of red boulderish country with scrub vegetation, junipers and whatnot. And I didn't know. I woke up. The dream was very vivid to me, and I wondered what it meant. And could have been bits and pieces of memory. But when we came up here to interview for a job, I said, this looks like the country in my dream. You know, we went through top of the world, and that's where there was a lot of foresty and a lot of boulders and a lot of mining and so forth. And then where the Stake Center was built, that fit the image almost to a T that I saw in my dream. And I said, well, it has to do with me finding my home in this kind of country. But in reality, I think what it really meant was, this is where the Globe Arizona stake would have its foundation, and that would become home to many of the saints. That's my testimony of it.
There were a lot of, we had the opportunity to serve in the Superior branch, and we loved that, and to get to know the people there. We've just had a lot of good opportunities. We've been temple workers and have enjoyed that experience, and of course some of that was during COVID. So just a lot of things like that that have happened that we will always remember.
We got a call from the temple presidency to come down for an interview out of the blue. I had no idea what that was about. I was a little bit anxious. You can imagine going in to meet with the temple presidency at the Mesa Temple, both my wife and I. And so they eventually interviewed us and found out that I was retired, but my wife was still working. So they said, well, would you accept a calling as an ordinance worker at the temple? I said, I guess so. I don't know anything about how to do it. I remember President Watts wanted us all to learn to be veil workers. At that time, it was permissible, and then it changed and it wasn't. Then it came back again. But so I accepted that calling, and it turned out that it was Brother Meller, who was in our Globe First Ward, had suggested my name since he was an ordinance worker also. And so that's how they called me and my wife. Then my wife later joined when they made the Gilbert Temple. So I served in those two temples. And it was quite an experience for me to learn how to do that. Very kind of nervous because I wasn't sure. I was used to just being a patron and letting the other workers worry about it.
Any other thoughts?
On our wall over here above the piano, that's probably our greatest accomplishment in our life, is working with our sons and helping them go on missions and helping them to set their goals high to be sealed in the temple to their spouses. And so we're very pleased that has happened. We hope it will be eternal. These things are all promissory in nature, and it's based on our faithfulness until we're in the ground. So we're hoping that we'll all be reunited beyond the veil when we're resurrected as a family.
Anything else?
Oh, it's just been an experience living in Globe and being here this many years. It's hard to believe that we've been here since 1970. We've seen many things happen, good, bad, but the people have been wonderful. We've had a lot of people move in and out. We've had some good, close relationships with so many people, and I wouldn't change that for anything. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you to both of you for visiting with us today. We appreciate greatly your comments. Since you pointed out these pictures on the wall, and we're in your house, do you care if maybe I show the pictures that you have on the wall that you were talking about? I'm assuming you're talking about the ones directly over the piano.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Do you want to turn the light on for it?
Sure.
Yeah, actually, get those lights. Then I'll just walk over there and we'll get them. Lovely pictures in front of the Mesa Temple. So here we go. And I'm focusing in on the one in the middle. I'm assuming this is your wedding picture, correct?
That's correct, yes.
The Mesa Temple.
Yep, September 6th. Oh, I'm in trouble now. 1968.
And then over here.
Top left is my son Rick, who's next to the last son. Below him is Robert and his wife. And then on the other side, at the bottom, is my son Aaron and his bride from Pima, and above him is David, our youngest son, and his bride, who live in Mesa. Well, they all live in Mesa except my son Rick, who lives in El Paso.
Again, thank you very much for visiting with us.
You're welcome.